Greetings. My name is Tyree Chavis, and I'm a member of the Adult Education and Human Resource Development Graduate Program. On March 12th at 10 a.m., I facilitated a workshop on effective allyship during a Zoom call. When selecting my topic, I recognized the need for an effective allyship workshop due to all the craziness happening in our world today. I believe oftentimes people want to help, but they aren't aware of the best practices of helping minorities. I approached the topic of effective allyship from the viewpoint of the different privileges in America. And doing that, I identified 4 privilege groups. And with each privilege group, I explained the applications of effective allyship. You will notice my target population is comprised of adult learners in different stages of their higher education journey. In selecting my target audience, I felt like it was imperative for members to pull from their different, diverse life experiences in order to create meaningful discussion. When designing my workshop, I used both the ADDIE model as well as Gagne's 9 events of instruction. And with all things technology, there lies room for error. You may notice the footage is pixelated in some places. This was due to a combination of my Wi-Fi speeds and the Zoom record feature. But without further ado, here is my 15-minute clip on effective allyship. I'd like to welcome everyone. This is my workshop on effective allyship. I know the survey asked you a couple questions about allyship. For those of you who have no idea what allyship is, welcome to this workshop. For those of you who know what allyship is but don't know how to wield it as a weapon to enact change, welcome to this workshop. Before we get started, I would like everyone to introduce themselves. Introduce yourself by stating your name, what you do, and if you could learn any skill, what would it be? And I'll start us off. So my name is Tyree Chavis. What I do, I'm a graduate in the Adult Education and Human Resource Department. And if I could pick any skill, it would be the skill to learn how to draw. That way I won't have to rely on other people to draw anything that I imagine in my head. I would like to remind everyone that this is a safe space. At points throughout the workshop, you'll be asked to share your experiences, both positive and negative, with allyship and privilege. I ask that you be respectful of others while they share. Our learning objectives for today are as follows. At the conclusion of this training, participants will be able to define effective allyship with 100% accuracy. You will also be able to recognize 4 privileged populations in America with 100% accuracy. Lastly, you'll be able to identify instances of using privilege to be an ally with 100% accuracy. But before we get started, can you answer this for me? When you think of the term ally, what comes to mind? You can say your answer out loud or type it in the chat box. Just give me some feedback.
I think of somebody who's not in like that direct group of people, but they do their research and try to educate themselves.
All right, so if you were to ask me, when I think of the term ally, I pretty much think of Superman. He doesn't differentiate with who he helps everyone regardless of the difference. So that's what the term ally means for me. All right, so when you think of the term privilege, what comes to mind?
For me, it's like having more advantage over another race.
Right. So when I think of the term privilege, I pretty much think of the Trump's presidency and the Obama's presidency. The standards that they put on Obama, they did not put on Trump, and that was a privilege afforded to Trump based on his skin color. He was a male, rich. I mean, a number of things played into that. But yeah, when I think of privilege, the Obama and Trump presidency situation is what appears in my head. Allyship can be defined as an active and consistent practice of unlearning and reevaluating in which a person in a position of power and privilege seeks to operate in solidarity with a marginalized group. When thinking about privilege, there are multiple examples of privilege here in America, but for the sake of this presentation, we will focus on the following 4 privileges, which are white privilege, religious privilege, gender privilege, and heterosexual privilege. I would like to reiterate that there are a lot of privileges in America, but these are the ones that we will be focusing on in this presentation. The first one being white privilege. White privilege is a concept that highlights the unfair societal advantages that white people have over non-white people. It is something that exists in all major systems and institutions that operate in society, as well as on an interpersonal level. Black and white privilege can include being treated differently in a job interview, getting denied loans, or being targeted by cops or hate groups. This may surprise you, but there are still people who do not believe white privilege exists. An example of white privilege is in the US as a white person. You do not have to search high and low to find products to suit your skin color or like band-aids, tights, and makeup. A crucial aspect of being an effective ally is wielding your privilege to help those around you. A person wielding white privilege can be an effective ally by listening, promoting, and learning. When listening, listen to what minorities and people of color have to say. Listen to our experiences. We are not talking just to talk. Promoting Promote the work of minorities, be it on social media, conducting research, or talking to friends and family. Going the extra mile of including the work of minorities in conversations creates opportunities where allies can educate their peers on topics that their peers typically wouldn't be familiar with. But before you do that, you have to learn. Learn about racism and racial inequalities happening around you. Use Google, ask questions, and listen to experiences. That way you will truly be informed on the issues, and you can start using your privilege to enact change around you. Before religious privilege includes being able to find a place of worship near you, feeling a sense of connection between your religious celebrations and the wider society. For example, automatically having a day off of work is a religious holiday that many of us do not take into account. So another question I have for you guys, can you guys think of any religious privileges?
For example, I am as a Muslim, like for Ramadan, we don't have like stores, have like those kind of stuff here in United States, but in our countries, it's plenty of it.
If I were to go into a career, no one would ever identify me as being the Christian guy or anything like that. It would be like, oh, that person's a Muslim, or oh, that person's a Jew, or Jewish, but things along those lines. And so just like with white privilege, a person wielding religious privilege can be an effective ally by not assuming, participating in outreach, and planning. Don't assume you understand everyone's religion. According to America's Academy of Religion, religious illiteracy in the U.S. is a widespread phenomenon that fuels prejudice. Don't plan all the parties. It's important to allow people with different faiths and perspectives to you to assist in planning of work and community parties. That way their voice is heard and they are represented in the event. This can also ensure events don't interfere with different faiths, holidays, or days of rest. Next, we have gender privilege. But before we go there, would anyone like to attempt at defining gender privilege?
Gender privilege, you automatically think like male privilege with like pay gap. They just have like more opportunities for promotions.
Gender privilege usually refers to male privilege, a set of privileges distributed to men on the basis of their gender. In many cases, men are centered forward and catered for in career progression. They get paid more and are oftentimes treated with more respect and listened to in everyday conversations. An example of this is in America, it's an unspoken rule that women will miss time from work when they have kids and their counterpart has no responsibility in the matter. A person wielding gender privilege can be an effective ally by listening, respecting space, remembering, and engaging. For respecting the space, large events, and local resource groups have afforded women a powerful platform for sharing experiences, providing support, and strategizing equity initiatives. Tread respectfully in these spaces, and before you utter a word, remember to listen. Remember, it's not about you. Ask women how you can amplify and not replace or usurp existing gender equity efforts. Refrain from taking center stage or speaking for women or mansplaining how women can approach gender equity efforts. The best cross-gender ally relationships are reciprocal and mutual growth enhancing. Share your social capital such as your influence, information, knowledge with women groups. Remember to ask them. Don't assume how you can best support their efforts. Next, we have our final privilege of the night, heterosexual privilege. But before we proceed, would anyone like to share any experiences, positive or negative, they've had with gender privilege? Heterosexual privilege, or straight privilege, describes the advantages granted to someone because of their heterosexual orientation. Possessing this privilege means never having to worry about coming out, feeling unsafe when holding hands with your significant other in public, or censoring yourself around different groups that find your orientation uncomfortable or wrong. An example of straight privilege is seeing your romantic and family aspirations represented in film, movies, and everyday conversations. A person wielding heterosexual privilege can be an effective ally by correcting, speaking up, promoting, and showing. When correcting, correct people if they misgender someone, even if that someone isn't in the room. I think a great example of this is the Caitlyn Jenner situation. People get in the habit of calling Caitlyn Jenner Bruce Jenner, like in a joking manner. So just using that scenario when we think of this. Say if Caitlyn Jenner was out of the room and someone called Caitlyn Bruce, you as an ally would say, no, their name is Caitlyn. Now, speaking up means when a person uses a slur or an insensitive racially charged language. So in the same situation, if that person calls them Bruce, or if they say Caitlyn is a man, you as an ally, you will speak up saying, no, this person has transitioned to a woman, so whatever they identify as, that's what you should recognize them as. Of the privileges afforded to you, being an advocate for fair treatment of minority groups not only makes you an effective ally, but makes you just a good human being. Right. I think it's important to recognize your privilege, and in doing that, you'll be able to wield it to not only be a better ally, but to also enact change in the everyday lives and the lives of those around you. Think over the 4 privileges while you enjoy this video that discusses 5 tips of allyship. And after this video, we will segue into our activity for tonight.
Allyship is not neutrality. Allyship is not, I believe in you. Good luck. Allyship is an active process that you're always.
At this point in the presentation, I broke everyone into 2 discussion groups where they were able to discuss the video and pretty much all the things that we discussed in the presentation. I provided them 4 questions to facilitate their discussion while in this group. The 4 questions were, did you agree with the points made in the video? How many of the 4 privileges do you have? Are there any instances where they could have been a better ally that they cared to share? And were there any privileges that I didn't mention that they felt like I should have mentioned in the presentation? And then I gave them 10 minutes to talk, and then I brought them back. And then we did a group discussion of I hope you all had some great conversation in your breakout groups. Let's discuss the first question. So would anyone like to answer, did you agree with the points in the video?
We agreed with everything, and it kind of like summarized everything we were learning about.
Mm-hmm. Were there any points that stuck out in particular?
The one part where it's talking about basically if you're like teaching somebody who's of the same race or like group as you, they're more obligated to like listen because it's coming from somebody who's similar to them. So I thought that was interesting because that could be like a tactic to use to like try to teach people more about things.
Personally thought point 3 was great of sticking up for people. I mean, I kind of talked about that when I talked about the Caitlyn Jenner situation, but I don't think we do that enough of, even if we feel uncomfortable sticking up for someone, I think it's important to still stick up because the person that you're sticking up for, they will remember. Even if the people that you're sticking up to them, they might be like, oh, like what, like why are you doing this? No, the person that is the targeted group in this scenario, they will remember you sticking up for them. And then if it's a scenario where they're not around and you're sticking up for them, you will remember that you stuck up for them. For the 4 privileges, how many do you possess? And then for me personally, I have 3 of the 4.
I have 1 of the 4.
I also have 3.
I also have 3, I guess in some cases, like female privilege under gender privilege too.
Okay, so my next question is, are there any instances where you could have been a better ally that you care to share? Remember, this is a safe space with no judgment. I can think back in high school when my friends and stuff would like crack like homophobic jokes and things. I would never say anything. I wasn't a person that joined in with the jokes because I wasn't raised that way. But I would never say anything when people crack jokes like that around me. And then now being an older person, I can understand like the ramifications of not correcting people when they think stuff like that as a joke. So I think that's instance of me being an ally. What about you guys?
Yeah, similar to what you were saying when I was younger. My my grandparents would have or say homophobic things, and I wouldn't really react or say anything to them. Even though I knew they were wrong. But now I'm older and I can kind of communicate that to them. I kind of make up for it.
Mine's not really like an example, but I noticed that everybody was kind of saying stuff from like back in high school. So what I noticed is like back in high school, I guess I wouldn't consider myself an ally then, but I would consider myself an ally to a lot of groups now because like once I came off to college, I kind of got my own thinking and my own viewpoints, and I educated myself on certain topics that I felt were important. So I feel like just as I got older, I just became more educated and I became an ally without kind of really knowing it.
I think that's what we all should aspire, becoming an ally without realizing it. And then I think it's also worth noting that how we all said in high school, like these were instances. So how can we create a world where in high school we're already better allies? But yeah, thank you, Jessica, for sharing. For the last question, are there any privileged groups or unprivileged groups that I did not mention today that you feel like I should have? Laurel, I think both you guys, just Zaria, you brought up the women privilege in certain scenarios. Laurel, you just brought up the disability. I think that's a privilege, not having a disability. But you guys have any more?
Social economical privilege.
Okay.
Oh yes, is that the same?
No, social. Yeah, that's a great one. Social economic. That yeah. And for those of you who don't know what socioeconomic privilege is, that's pretty much like having a privilege just because you come from money or your family's just accustomed to money. You come from a good life.
I want to add something. It's not just to be rich, to be have privilege. Sometimes if you have opportunity or accessibility for school, for going to college, that's one of the privilege too.
We also talked about like out of state versus in-state tuition. So like we wouldn't be able to like go to a school out of state because we don't have like the money for that. Whereas people who are privileged in that like situation, they can go to like any school they want in any state.
Thank you all for sharing. That was a I can tell that you had very insightful discussions in your group chats. Effective allyship is first identifying your privilege and then using it to be an ally to different minority groups. I found this resource online that applies to being an ally to transgender community, but you can sub the word transgender with any minority group and the rules still apply. I will be sending this in the chat.
I have something to add.
All right.
I just noticed like during like the Black Lives Matter movements and everything on Instagram and stuff, people would be posting things basically how to become like an ally.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like social media is like a big impact on allyship because it's a way to like promote it, and people who might not like go and like Google to educate themselves, like they're finding stuff to educate themselves through like Instagram or Twitter.
Mm-hmm. And then Jessica, I think you also bring up a good point. So I was doing a reading of an article a while back, and it pretty much was this thing of fake wokeness, right? So like you mentioned with social media right now, everyone was on social media doing all these things like Blackout Tuesday and things, which are acts of allyship, right? But if you being an ally doesn't expand beyond you just posting something on Instagram, you're not being an effective ally because you aren't necessarily using your privilege. You're just pretty much just being an ally, oh, I'm in support. But I think being an effective ally is using the things that are easy for you in life to pretty much make easier life for people who don't have those things afforded for them. But yeah, that was definitely a great point. And I sent this infographic in the chat. I hope you all got it. I am about to drop another survey in the chat. In this survey, it's just pretty much a post test to see what you learned during our presentation. So if you all could do that, that would be great. Sent it. So if you all can do that. And then once again, just give me a thumbs up when you've completed that. That would be great. I would like to thank you all for joining my presentation today. It's definitely been enlightening talking with you all, and I appreciate your participation. I want to tell you to have a great remainder. I hope you enjoyed the 15-minute clip of my Effective Allyship workshop as much as I did. During my time here in the AHRD program, I've learned numerous skills and theories that will assist me in leading and designing future training initiatives. I'm grateful to all the professors who assisted me during this journey, and I look forward to taking all that I have learned and applying it in my future endeavors. Remember, being an effective ally means using the privileges afforded to you to enact change in the lives of others. Thank you, and I look forward to talking with you.